Hey there! Welcome back to another live fan commentary. This time I'm going to be doing a commentary on the Blob remake from 1988. I'm going to wait till a few more people are able to stop by um, before I get started, as usual. I see RJ's here. Hey there, RJ. Um, He's asking me for my thoughts on the new "I Know What You Did Last Summer" trailer. I haven't watched it yet, so I can't really say anything. I will definitely give that a watch later, though. I want to do another talking cinema and talk about some trailers that I haven't been able to discuss yet. So that could be one of them. Um, hey there, Bobby. This stream, by the way, is a request for Dim Jim. He requested a commentary of the Blob remake. So uh, here I am. And I just like doing it more as as a live stream than just as like a regular, average sort of audio commentary kind of thing. I like interacting with the chat and gives me an opportunity to go live. I actually paid for the upper tier for StreamYard, so that's why you actually get a little bit better video quality this time around. Just waiting to see, if there's going to be anybody else who's going to drop in to say hi. Um, so when it comes to other stuff, like I haven't really been doing a whole lot lately, except go to work and then watch stuff for paid requests. Um, for instance, I've been watching more Czech films, and I've been watching, a decent amount of uh variety of things. I actually watched Amelia Perez recently. Yeah. uh I'm gonna save my thoughts for that for a rant video that'll be coming pretty soon. Hey there, Emmanuel. Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. Thank you. Thanks again for the paid request for that one. Wall Street was great. It's a great movie. It was really a lot of fun to watch that again. Um, Bobby, should Popeye's chicken sell spinach? I mean, if they do a good job and it's some, nice tasting spinach, then sure. I mean, but I bet you're thinking about them selling spinach because it's Popeye, right? You're gonna sell that spinach because Popeye's chicken, huh? Sorry if I'm not saying a whole lot. I haven't done a stream in a while, so it's a little awkward. But I'm gonna try to definitely hopefully make it entertaining. Just kind of waiting for topics to kind of talk about. Hey there, Mr. Dragon Boogie. Thanks for stopping by. I know it's kind of a Tuesday night, so it was gonna be a little slow in terms of people popping in. Well, that's definitely a fun thing to binge watch, Miami Vice. TV shows that I've been watching season 6 of Saturday Night Live for an upcoming video, and that's been pretty rough. That's a pretty bad season. Did I know DreamWorks almost made a Ronald McDonald movie, but it never got made? Huh, interesting. I know there was a cartoon. Hey there, RJ. Yeah, I don't know if I would say worst musical ever, but it's up there. It's pretty bad. Let's see here. Just find the movie. Just getting that all set up for later. This will be the first time I've seen the Blob remake, to be honest, since I watched the 4K, which I have from Scream Factory, which I would highly recommend if you have 4K and you're a fan of that film. But I'd like to see the David Lynch unmade movie, One Saliva Bubble, with Steve Martin and Martin Short. Absolutely. I mean, anything with those two would be fun. So, speaking of Steve Martin, I actually have a Steve Martin movie review that will be uploaded pretty soon. A Parenthood. I actually just finished recording that review and editing it, so that'll be up maybe even after the stream later tonight. So, all right, we got the Blob video all set up here. Still just kind of waiting to settle in a little bit more. Heard a lot of good things about Sinners, and my birthday's coming up in May, and I think I might go see that. I haven't seen a single film in the theater yet this year, but I think I'll go see that one. I think that would definitely be worth it, considering the fact that it's gotten a lot of good reviews. I like the trailer, and yeah, that seems like one that I think would be worth checking out in the theater. Hey there, Jonathan. That's cool. I saw it in 35 millimeter, so I saw it in the theater too over here in Portland, Oregon, the Pacific Northwest at the Hollywood Theater. What if I took Beetlejuice the Wrestler and one or two of the Beetlejuice movies and fly all the way to the Beetlejuice Giant Star and watch the Beetlejuice movie there? Um, that would definitely be a different way to watch the movie. Would I be able to see it only because I'm using the power from the star? Because that's the only way that makes any sense that I could ever be able to watch Beetlejuice on Beetlejuice the Star. Hey there, Drew. Yeah, well, season 20 is another season I'm going to be watching. What I'm doing is I'm comparing season 6 with season 20 to determine which one is actually the worst. So I'm going to finish up season 6, and I'm going to start watching season 20, and then I'm going to do that video. Hey there, Acres of Movies. You need another one? Yeah, Blu-rays can kind of get to that point sometimes. Um, Thankfully, with the 4K coming out, the 4K that has been out for a while, it's not too bad in terms of price to get the Blu-ray. Oh man, there's so many great kills. I probably have to say, for me, it's a tie between Paul and the guy who works at the restaurant. The guy who gets grabbed by the blob head first into the sink. Those would probably be my favorite kills in the blob. All right, let's see here. New Line Cinema, yeah, they were gonna do the Blob remake years ago. Yeah, that was gonna be Rob Zombie's The Blob, if I remember correctly. And I think there was another Blob remake that was also announced that I think Simon West was attached to, but it never got made. 'Cause we don't need another Blob remake. We already have the best possible one, which is, the 1988 film. Oh, I like that kill too, for sure. But it's one of those kills that I can't say is my favorite because it happens to poor Candy Clark. Um, but yeah, that's a creative kill, as is, of course, the sync kill. Deep Space, that's a fun one with Charles Napier. Yeah, I like that one. Actually, I have a Blu-ray of that. It's pretty cool that I got a Blu-ray release. Yeah, Lyle Conway did a great job with the effects, as did Tony Gardner, who did a lot of makeup effects for the Blob remake as well. And you'll see a little more of Lyle and Tony later on after the commentary. So stick around, folks. That's all I got to say. I got something cool and a little bit different planned um, for after the commentary. So I'm not actually gonna just stop the stream after the commentary is done. I'm actually gonna keep going for a little bit longer because I got something pretty cool to show you. Make Red Heat 2 with Arnold and Son and Belushi and his sons. I don't know. I mean, I'm okay with not having more Red Heat, to be honest. Um, it was fine as a one-off kind of thing. Yeah, Deep Space. Yeah, Fred Olen Ray hasn't directed a ton of good movies. That definitely is one of the better ones. Hey there, Mr. D-Man. Yeah, I think it'll honestly be really cool. Um, and I'm not gonna spoil it, but I definitely think it's gonna be something that fans of the Blob remake are gonna definitely find interesting, to say the least. Alan Castle wrote an unmade movie, The Weapon, for Atlantic Entertainment. Tex after Stranded, Tex Fuller movie did well in the theater. Huh. Oh yeah, Stranded. That's another pretty obscure, lesser known film. Like Stranded, I think that only was released on VHS and Laserdisc. I don't even think that has a release in the US in terms of like a Blu-ray or DVD. I don't think it has a release anywhere, to be honest, on that. Monster House. Yeah, I think I remember reading about the apartment living. That could have been fun. I've been hearing a lot of good things about it too. I'm actually gonna go see it. I'm curious enough about it that I want to go see it. My birthday is next week, or yeah, it's next week on Friday. So I think I'll probably go see it. It's like an early birthday present or something on one of my days off from work. So see, there's about 15 people on here, and hey there, Jonathan. All right. Do I think the Back to the Future remake would be a sin? Yeah, I think it'd be bad. I don't know if it would be a sin, but it definitely would be bad. I haven't seen Submarine yet, Ryan, but I'm going to for sure. I'm trying to get caught up on a few more requests, and then I'm gonna get started on the Patreon stuff. Top 10 favorite characters from Bobby: Punky Brewster, Togera, Godzilla, Janitor from Willy's Wonderland, Pippi Longstocking, Braun Strowman, Rambo. Okay, cool. Hey there, Pred. Yeah, I'm doing good. How about you? Raphael, Rocky, Martha Speak. All right. Yeah, I agree. Like, you don't need to remake Back to the Future. It's hasn't really had any issues in terms of its age. It's aged very well. Tin Man horror franchise. CDs of Heart kills people? No. No. We don't need any more of those dumb horror franchises from people who gave us blood and honey. I like the soundtrack to Graduate. I like Submarine. Cool. I mean that's a good soundtrack. So what if they did Willy's Wonderland sequel called Wally's Wonderland? It would take place at an amusement park. Oh, does it mean? Do you mean it takes place in Wally World? It's in the same universe as National Lampoon's Vacation. It's got Nick Cage in it, and I'd watch it. Yeah, I know about the She-Hulk movie. Yeah, there was even some photos of Brigitte in makeup. It didn't look good. I much would have rather seen The Punisher 2, which they actually made a poster for. But of course, the movie never got made, so it didn't really matter. Brendan Fraser played Rodney Dangerfield. Hmm. I don't know. Maybe. I don't think we need a Rodney biopic, though. Honestly, I'd rather see the Sam Kinison biopic. I think they were going to do it, thinking about doing it, but never got made. Or a better John Belushi biopic than Wired. Piece of crap. Cool, Pred. You saw The Amateur? That's a remake, actually, of I think a '70s movie. Warfare. Heard that was pretty good. Drop. Drop, I'm curious about because I like the concept, and one of the producers is actually somebody who is connected with somebody on Smosh, which is a. I actually watched Smosh. Not really for like the older stuff. I've been more into the newer stuff like Smosh games and so on and so forth. And so some of the one of the cast members of Smosh is actually I think she's married to one of the producers or one of the writers that kind of came up with the concept for it. So I think that that's definitely a reason why I'm curious about it because there was a bunch of Smosh cast members that were actually at the red carpet premiere of Drop recently. And Minecraft, I'm gonna check that out for myself later with no screaming kids though. Um, that is just I'm so glad I don't work at the movie theater anymore. That's all I have to say. And if I still worked at the movie theater and I had to deal with that nonsense, bunch of screaming teenagers throwing popcorn and drinks and just yelling chicken jockey and just being obnoxious assholes, man, that would be I'd probably get fired because I'd probably I might get into a fight with these teenagers. Get my ass fired. Good. Maybe that's died down a little bit. National Treasure fan? Absolutely. I love the first film. The second film I could still watch, but I definitely like the first film more. No, I haven't really seen Punky Brewster that much. Novocaine, yeah. I want to see that too because I'm a big fan of those kind of movies, and I'm really starting to warm up to Jack Quaid. Um, and I think it's pretty cool that he's carrying on his father's legacy, and he has his father's smile. He has some of that same charm that Dennis had, and so I think that could be a lot of fun. Hey there, Matt. I know you already did a commentary on this, and you're probably pretty busy. Um, but you're welcome to join me if you want to. But I just thought I would throw that out there if you're interested. But I know you're busy, and I know you already watched this movie recently. Just watched United 93. Really well done. Okay, cool. Heard about that one. Haven't seen it though. I guess one of a couple films from the films about 9/11. Does he have some of Meg Ryan's charm too? I could say so. Yeah, little. Nosferatu. I'll save my thoughts for that until later. But I guess I'll give a little bit of a preview for some people. I wasn't a big fan of it. Would I like a merged combined sequel to Jewel of the Nile and Crocodile Dundee? Nah, no thanks. Thought the movie and Akira are like for movies to deal with deadly experiments. Never really thought about that, but I guess you could look at it that way. Deadly experiments, body horror, um, a blob that eats things. I guess. Hey, that could work, Ryan. Make a horror comedy version of it. Maybe that would make the nudity actually fit better because then it would actually be in line with the tone instead of just completely out of place, like in the actual movie. It's still a masterpiece compared to Zapped Again, though. That one is so bad. So bad. No, I didn't watch WrestleMania 41, Pred. I did keep up on the winners and I watched some clips. Didn't wasn't impressed. Not at all. But yeah, apparently The Rock was supposed to show up and Stone Cold was gonna come in and be involved in the match between John Cena and Cody Rhodes, and then The Rock didn't show up. It was like last minute, like 2 weeks before Mania. He was like, "Oh, I got a commitment with a movie and I can't do it," and so that's why we have the ending that we have, and it sucks and just feels like a retread of the end of the main event match from night one when Paul Heyman low blowed CM Punk. Thoughts on Ray Nicholson? I need to see more with him. I downloaded a movie he did with Samara Weaving, Borderline, I think is what it's called. I haven't seen it yet though. And I think he was also in uh yeah, he was also in Smile too, but I haven't seen that yet. Hey, that's cool, Matt. Have a good dinner and maybe some other time. Still want a Kung Pao sequel? Okay. No, I haven't seen the trailer for Weapons yet. You weren't a big fan of Borderline? Is that it? Is or Smile 2 or WrestleMania 41? Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't sound good at all. It sounds like there's maybe like two good matches and everything else is crap. Yeah, WrestleMania 41. I got it. I was a little slow. Forgive me. This happens every time I take my allergy meds lately. It says non-drowsy, but I swear to God, I still get drowsy no matter what. I think it's because I've been taking these drugs for too long. Did I like get smart? Um, I haven't seen it, so I can't really say. I do have the Blu-ray though. But all right. Okay. Let me get this movie set up and let's get this commentary started. Now, before I get started though, I'll check in with some people. Hey there, Mike. Do I like Out of Sight? I don't know. Another one I haven't seen yet, but I do have the 4K, so um, would be probably a pretty awesome looking watch due to having the 4K from Kino Lorber whenever I do decide to watch it. But speaking of watching movies, let's watch The Blob. So I got the movie all set up here, and as usual, I'm gonna do a countdown. I'm gonna go from three down to one, and then when I say press play, and then hopefully everything will be synced up on your end when it comes to the film. I will check back with the chat throughout the commentary the best that I can, and hopefully it'll be a fun time. So I have the movie ready to go here, and three, two, one, pressing play. The Blob remake is, in my opinion, one of the best remakes out there. It's right up there with The Thing and The Fly, both films that came out in the 80s. This is one I completely fell in love with after the first time that I saw it. I rented it from a library and watched it one night, loved it. Loved it so much I even recorded it on TiVo and then watched it on there. And I actually watched it with my grandmother, and she enjoyed it too. And she's normally not super big on gory horror films, but she had fun with it as well. So I have some fond nostalgic memories of watching this with my grandmother. We used to watch a lot of B movies together, um, like the original Blob or Reptilicus, and the stuff that used to air on AMC back in the day. I really like the opening credits here. Starts out in space, then you pan down to Earth, and then you go and zoom in, and now you're in Arborville. And just does a great job showing you the town, making the town into its own little kind of character in itself, and just providing the film with just some great atmosphere from the very beginning. And of course, you have the score by Michael Honing that's also accompanying it, that just works very well with the film. So there's a lot of differences between this and the original. There's some similarities, small town type thing. I think some I don't think the character names are really that similar. And the threat is technically for outer space, but it's not what you think it is. There you got Tony Gardner, who did a terrific job with the makeup effects. Lyle Conway did an equally as good job with the creature, the blob effects for the film that, to me personally, still hold up pretty well as the visual effects by Dream Quest Images and Hoyt Eatman. It's just a great example of calm before the storm, you know. And there's just also a certain just eeriness to it all. The town is empty. Great script by Chuck Russell and Frank Darabont. Like really amazing script by them. And then he got Chuck Russell, who's the director, and I think this is still one of his best films. And I actually have a bit of a connection with Chuck because I made a music video tribute to this film called Flesh Harvest years ago. It's no longer up on YouTube because of copyright, but I made the tribute. It actually got a fair amount of views, and Chuck actually saw it and he liked it. So Chuck actually saw something that I made in regards to this film and gave me some props for it. So I think that's really cool. Like apparently it was like in a podcast that he did with somebody a while back. Here you got the lovely Shawnee Smith. Um, Definitely had a crush on her when I was in when I first saw this in high school. I also like Donovan Lettich here as Paul. I didn't see a lot of high school football, but I watched a few games at Lake Oswego. Had some fun. I think I went and saw one with my dad one time. Man, that's gotta hurt. Hey, it's not all bad. You get to see Meg. So the screenplay, to me, it's a great example of like a diversion type of script where you think it's gonna go one way, but then it winds up going the other. And I love how it just introduces the characters. Yeah, Brian Flagg here, Kevin Dillon. Still my favorite performance from him, to be honest. And he's just trying to, make this jump on his motorcycle, which actually will tie into the film later. I love the editing here where it edits the crowd cheering for the high school football game in with Brian trying to, ride on the motorcycle and make the jump. You got the hobo just clapping. Good job. The can man. The Blob is working for Dick Jones. Maybe. I don't think they'd be able to control the Blob that well, though. You have Candy Clark, Jeffrey DeMunn. Really like these two. This film's like a great example of a great cast of characters. They might not have like the most depth, but the script still gives them things to do, reasons to be a part of the plot, and ways for them to show a little bit of their own sort of charm or personality. It's honestly a fun little charming romance here. between the sheriff and Candy Clark. Yeah, I completely forgot about that. Yeah, the actor who plays the Can Man, he was also in Leprechaun 2, where he played another homeless guy. Yeah. Now, the sheriff, they establish him as, kind of a nice guy, but then he's harassing Brian Flagg, and then the cops here are just messing with this guy. It does a great job making you sympathize with Brian, to be honest. Who, yeah, he's a bit of a troublemaker, but he doesn't deserve to get blamed for like everything. Eventually that eventually happens later on in the film. So it's just setting things up. Like you already know that he's being watched by the police. They already have this preconceived notion of him. But then you have these nice little moments here with him and the mechanic to show he's not really this punk that, the local cops think that he is. And then you have the snowmaker, which would be utilized in the finale. I don't know if he returned the full set, the full set of socket wrenches by the end of the movie, if I remember correctly. Hey man, I feel the same way. Diet Coke sucks. Crush that Diet Coke can. Screw diet. OKC, Oklahoma City. Yeah, yeah, that's a real place. I lived there for a couple years. Got the meteor, which I believe that was an effect that they actually shot live. They used like a crane and like a prop, and I think there was some other stuff that they think they might. I don't think they did it with a blue screen, but I'm not entirely sure because there was a fair amount of blue screen work throughout the movie. And then you got this scene, which is hilarious. Donovan Lettich, and then you got his friend Scott Jeske. He's played with Ricky Paul Golden. It does a great job playing just a jerk jock. And then the priest shows up. It's like, how awkward is that, man? The priest who's played, by Del Close, who plays Reverend Meeker. Ribbed or the regular. And then Scott's like, "They're not for me, they're for my friend." Yeah. Oh, man. What a loser. Throw his friend under the bus there. And then he just completely ties in with his fake story there with the way that he reacts. "Come on, this girl's waiting. I can't keep her waiting too long. Let's go." "Hey there, not JPEG. It's going alright. Just watching the Blob." I believe a lot of the gel and a lot of the stuff that they use for the Blob in this is a similar sort of, material they use for the slime in, Ghostbusters 2. I think it's like methyl cell or something. They use that, and they also use some other, different types of, materials for the Blob in this film. I like how it legitimately it's got this pinkish look to it. It's not the bright red like from the original, so it helps differentiate itself. But then you cut to the kid eating the jello, which is exactly like what the original Blob was. The original Blob was like jello red. Absolutely, definitely is. I love this with the kids talking about the slasher movie. Don't worry, there's no sex. I think one of these two kids is in Return of the Living Dead 2. I don't remember exactly which actor it was though. Man, Paul is so lucky. Gets to go on a date with Shoddy Smith. Quick thoughts on the 1958 original. The 1958 original was okay for what it is, for the time. I'm not a super big fan of it though. I definitely feel it's more slow paced. I don't really care for the characters as much as the cast of characters in the remake. Plus, I think the script is just genuinely better all the way around in the remake versus the original. It's not just the characters; it's the way the story unfolds, the things the Blob does, the way they take out the Blob, the little bits of satire of the horror genre that they throw in there. And it's got some respectful homages to, the original Blob as well, and also how it takes the plot line of original Blob with, you know, with, the Paul type of character and has him, uh, not be the lead. And then you have really funny moments like this. Ripped. It just cracks me up every time. It's so funny. And just the line delivery by Art Lafour there is just perfect. Which of the '50s Fly, Blob, or Thing do I prefer? I would probably say The Thing out of those 3. Son of the Blob is a piece of shit, but Where the Blob? That film's awful. Do I believe in the thunder? I'm more of a Blazers fan, to be honest. Prom Night is Superior remakes originals. No, I haven't seen Matango, but I've heard about it. Yeah, it did. It had a son. Well, not really. It was just a really bad movie from the '70s. I like that setup where you think initially he's like an axe wielding maniac, but he's just trying to cut his hand off. Another way that it subverts expectations. I love Scott Jiskey's gonna die. If you really think about it, like, man, the Blob, like, that would have to be excruciating. Essentially, it eats you like your stomach acid, you know? It's acidic. Some good tension there between the 2 of them. Now, the doctor that you're gonna see here is actually a somebody you might recognize if you're a fan of the horror films or cult movies. I love it the first answer is like, "Does he have Blue Cross? Does he have insurance?" Yep, all is well. Hey there, Greg. I haven't seen War Party yet, but I'm curious about it. I know it has some good reviews. I do too, Austin. It's great. That's another way where the script kinda sets things up where you're thinking, "Okay, alright, he's out of the picture, so, you know, these are our 2 leads." I mean, I get part of me gets why he's doing this, but another part of me is like, "I don't know, man, like, see something move under a blanket, I don't think I'm really gonna go check that out." I don't wanna know what that is. It sounds like it could be dangerous. Sure is. Now this doctor is played by Jack Nance, who was in a lot of David Lynch films. He was actually the lead in Eraserhead. This is such a gruesome effect here. Just, ugh, made his body look like a cheese pizza. Great touch there with the acid just falling from the ceiling. And what happens next is honestly one of the most horrific death scenes I've ever seen. I mean, just look at this. He's still alive at that point, screaming his head off as it's dissolving him, and then Meg grabs his arm, and then it just rips right off. Like, ugh. And then his head just gets crushed in the blob, and just ugh. I remember when I first saw that, I was genuinely like shocked. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and it's still like an incredible practical effect. I think the reaction, Shawnee gave there was, not acting as well because, she didn't know how intense that was gonna be. "Hey, here we got a RoboCop alum here, Paul McCrane, playing another cop on Jeffrey DeMunn's force." Excuse me. Sheriff Herb. Yeah, melted him like ice cream. It's crazy to me that they just assume that it's Brian. You know, because Brian was on Speed 2, absolutely horrible, unneeded sequel. Backdraft 2 is terrible too. So Here is another extension of just how much of a jerk Scott Jeske is. Getting Erica Leniak over here plastered on his special cherry cooler so he could take advantage of her. Let's just say Scott's about to, give a whole new meaning to "Me Too" later. The guy's such a skis. He has his own, like, special trunk full of booze and alcohol. In the background here is another song by Alien, who, did the song for the end credits, um, which is a classic. Brave New Love. Just the details of everything. He's got these special class rings. They're supposed to be, like, really, special and unique when he gives them to these girls, and he just has a box full of them in his trunk. He realizes that she's passed out, and his first thought isn't, "Is she okay?" His first thought is, "Oh, let me cop a feel. Let me take a peek." Such a jerk. Honestly, Greg, I think Alien was better than Europe, but they didn't have as much success, sadly. Yeah, great practical effects by Tony Gardner throughout the film. What are you doing, man? The script was, like, ahead of its time in a way, because like, it actually does condemn his actions. It's like, "Nah, this shit is wrong." And here's karma. "You just got me too, bitch." Hashtag me too. I love this shot here by Chuck Russell with the snow globe. It's really great framing of this shot. Again, the whole town is just really got a thing against a flag. No, I'm not doing Halloween 4 unless somebody requests it. I would say franchise most likely gonna have a sequel would be Tremors, 'cause, I think the original writers, the creators of it, they just got the rights back. That's gotta be so disheartening for Meg. But you gotta think about it from the parent's perspective, like, why would you believe that? You'd be like, there's no way. Some blob ate him? Come on. That didn't happen. It was just you're just traumatic. You're just stressed out. Here, take this pill. Forget about it. I like the touch there of it having the class ring inside of the blob. Now, there's a novelization of the blob, and there's some extra stuff that actually gives you like a point of view of the blob itself, like what the blob is thinking, which is really intriguing, weird. Got Briggs over here. But I do like the fact that Herb has these assumptions about Brian, but eventually he does realize that there's no evidence, there's nothing that really supports the theory of him, being this killer. We got nothing on him. Let him go. God, McCrane plays such a great asshole. Like they didn't have to have this moment for Herb to let him go, but they did. Helps the sheriff honestly, look like a much more balanced character. Makes you start to kind of get on his side a little bit more, and then when the blob, you know, makes him a snack later, it actually is kind of a bummer. Yeah, that would have been cool. I would have definitely loved to have seen it. Neiman Marcus. I really like this scene. It's short, but it really adds a lot to the film, especially when it comes to establishing the connection between Brian and Meg. And some great stuff with, Fran as well. Favorite horror hero from a franchise and horror villain. That's tough. I'd have to think about that. Brian Flagg's definitely up there. In terms of a villain, big fan of Freddy. Oh, no, something or what? I love how initially it just looks like they're not at all gonna be compatible. She calls him full of shit, storms out, but then Brian apologizes and then shows a nicer side of him. Kevin Dillon, like, he never really had, like, a pretty so, the Blob didn't do that well. I love that. Unbelievable. Never heard you say the word shit before. How was that for you? But as, like, a lead actor in a film, sadly, he didn't have a major hit like his brother, so he just, made more of an impact on, television later on in the show Entourage. I haven't seen the Purge sequels yet, so I can't really say for sure. Same thing goes for Midnight Meat Train. I really do love Candy Clark in this. Makes what happens later so much more horrifying, to be perfectly honest. Backed up sink. I've dealt with some of those in the past. They're not fun. Never had an acid amoeba inside though, but still some nasty stuff. Pretty gross. All kinds of shit grows in there. This poor guy. This honestly made me scared to put my hand in a drain for the longest time. I'm probably not alone in that. Hey, it could have, but they went with the sink instead, which I think is honestly a really good choice. Because you've seen the toilet stuff, ghoulies coming out of the toilet, whatever. Sink, not so much. And then just how brutal it is, like head first, the sound effects. Then she turns around and then sees his legs flying in the air, just crunched into the sink. Oh, then the pipe bulges, the blood sprays. It's like, oh, God. And then like there's no real pause or refrain because then the blob's just right out of the sink and now it's coming after him. I've seen people say the effects are dated or don't hold up. I respectfully disagree. I think they hold up really well when it comes to blue screen effects and, practical stuff for the time. That's where you get to know the Blob's weakness. Can't stand the cold. We have the payphone scene coming up here. It's another brutal way to go. Not really something that would be that much of a thing now because nobody uses a payphone anymore. After Amityville 4, okay, I could see that too. Trash compactor, yeah. Yeah, I like the second and the third one. The first one I'm not as big on, but the second's my favorite. The way this is all set up is just, it's like doubly. It's so creepy. She's trapped. She sees the blob enveloping the phone booth, and if that isn't bad enough, then she's trying to call the sheriff at this point, and then she sees the sheriff. He's there already. Went down to the diner. There he is. He's already there. Just horrifying. And then boom, crunched, sandwiched. I don't want to see Gremlins 3. That I really don't. I don't want to see that. Yeah, I could. That's a good point. Some of them are being kind of contrarian. Some of them are just being dumb though. Like some of the articles I've seen about how dated movies are. I'm like, oh, because they're just using technology from the time. That doesn't mean it's dated. It just means that that's just the way things were. Now, I think you can make an argument that some effects can be kind of dated, like with the original Blob, for instance. Well, this one, not so much to me personally. I love that. It's all right. I got a key. I got this brick. Nice little touch there to show that this reverend is not necessarily as perfect of an individual as he seems. A little bottle of alcohol. He's got his own sins. Then he sees the blob. Is that a baby crying? I never noticed that. But it sounded like a baby crying. Did the blob eat a baby? Yeah, they do. They hold up a lot better than the CGI in Spawn. Yeah, Hot Fuzz is great. Oh, I mean, I think they can. I mean, they made some creature features. I mean, Crawl was one. That one was pretty good. Man, that cat just keeps showing up. It's like the third time that cat's been here. I think that was the same cat that was in the opening credits. There's the little frozen pieces of the blob. This is where you set things up for the Reverend and his involvement with the blob later on. I think those are like quartz crystals or some stuff like that. I know there's some people who have pieces of the blob as props. Like there are fans who have like little crystals in a jar. So you've already subverted a lot of expectations uh, throughout this script, but it doesn't just stop with Brian and Meg. What happens to Paul? Some of the other ways that it's playing around with conventions and with cliches. It just progressively gets crazier and crazier. That's a big part of why I love the script. It just escalates so efficiently, so well. I mean, if if somebody requests those, sure. Not anytime soon, but if somebody requests reviews of those, I mean, it's definitely a possibility of me doing reviews. If you like Hansel and Gretel, should have brought some breadcrumbs. Some witty dialogue and some great banter in this script as well. This is so great. Like it's shot and edited as if it's like what you would see when a UFO arrives, but it's a helicopter. And now we have all of these government agents in the white suits with guns. And now we've subverted expectations again. Now we've switched genres. Now it's into conspiracy thriller mode. The men from Glad are showing us how to keep our leftovers fresh. No, I haven't seen Attack the Block yet, but I have seen Tropic Thunder. I saw that in the theater actually. It's a lot of fun. No, I haven't seen the Mr. D Man. I haven't seen the trailer for the new I Know What You Did Last Summer yet. So a bitch you've ever seen. This is so hilarious. This is like right up there with some of the best horror parodies. This bit here, the with the slasher movie that the kids are watching in the theater. Oh, you seasoned it months ago. It's also great satire of some, some of the people who watch these movies who just like spoil everything. You shut up. Throw some popcorn, a single kernel at the kid. Great way to break up the levity. Like you're thinking, okay, nothing's gonna happen in the theater, right? Wrong. Being a projectionist back then probably might have had its perks, but also probably would have might have been really honestly difficult, kind of a pain in the ass, not very fun. I mean, especially if the AC doesn't work. 'Cause back then, like you actually had to use your hands to, put the reels in. If you pay attention to the posters and the photos on the wall, there's a lot of horror references here. There's actually a photo from the Thing remake on the wall. I never noticed that before. That's pretty cool. You've got the Blob remake, and it's actually having a little reference to another remake that came out in the same decade. Love that shot by Chuck. POV of the Blob heading right towards him in the vent. And then when this guy like looks up on the ceiling, it's pure nightmare fuel, really. Just like, oh, just God. Another great bit of editing there. Tying the guy's screams of horror with the people screaming at the slasher movie in the audience. And that's a good homage to the original because there was a scene that had took place in a movie theater. Am I more Evil Dead or Scream or more Ash or Sydney? I'd probably say Ash. I do like Sydney though. Favorite Robert Davi film? I mean, he was in Die Hard, so that'd be up there, or License to Kill. I think it has a chance to succeed as well as long as the writing is good. It's gonna be different not to have Josh involved though. I understand why, but in a lot of ways that's his show. It's his baby, it's his project. Thankfully, he's still got that wrench set. Meg, you're being a little naive there. Royal Canadian Mounties. I agree, Brian. It does. Stinks to high heaven. It's suspicious as hell. I wouldn't trust those white lab coat wearing biological experts as far as I could throw them. This isn't a bad setup though, because it sets him up to be able to be on his own in order to help, Meg later. Rappers turned actors or pro wrestlers turned actors. I'd probably say pro wrestlers for one reason and one reason alone, Roddy Piper. Anytime that there is a loudspeaker and it says there's no cause for alarm, there's always a cause for alarm. There's no cause for alarm. Everything is going to be okay. No, it's not. It's not. Ugh, that guy's the worst. And then the blob said, "Yeah, this guy sucks. Let me take care of him for you." This is honestly one of my favorite scenes in a movie theater. Epilepsy warning for anybody who has an issue with that, because tons of strobe lights in this scene. But I really like how the strobe lights are used, how everything's all edited in this theater scene. It's really intense and like how, it shows you little glimpses of the blob eating some people. It also helps cover up some of the effects, cover some of the warts. The score accompanies the scene well too. And they're trying to get away, and then the kid with his jacket, stupid zipper. And I think there was even like the reference to the zipper earlier in the movie too, which it's just a sign of a great script. Like everything just connects together. It's about the only time to willingly go into a sewer if a man-eating blob is chasing after you. Ah, it's gotta hurt. Burn your hair off. Yeah, Brian had to get out so he could get his motorcycle. Also, so you could get an extra little reveal in terms of the reality of the blob and where it actually came from. Which is just another way the script, plays with your expectations. Oh, you think that it's a meteor from outer space, but it's a satellite, and it's from the United States. It's a germ warfare test. We fucked up. That's tough, but because I really like Alien and Aliens, but because of the fact that Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection are a thing, and Alien Covenant and the Prometheus movies and Alien versus Predator, I'll say Evil Dead. The locals are expendable. I like how there's like one guy who's like, "Yeah, Dr. Meadows, you're being a jerk." Joe Seneca. No, no one bought demons, Jonathan. Yeah, I mean, there's really no other way to know all of this without Flag, escaping, and they don't know that he's out, and he's just listening in. I love how the guy resists, but he still carries out the orders. It's like, okay, you resisted it, but like you're still doing it anyway. It's like I'm not gonna stand for this. I guess I'll stand for it. At least for right now anyway. Yeah, I would say the ship has sailed a long time ago. What things could have been done better in Revenge for Jolly? Watch my review. If you haven't already. I don't really remember that movie that much, to be honest. This is actually a pretty fun chase right here. Brian on his motorcycle being chased by the military guys on ATVs and on foot, and then it sets things up for him to make the jump that he failed to make earlier in the movie, which is a great stunt coming right up here. I miss stunts like this, in all honesty. It's definitely not Kevin Dillon doing that. I love that. Just flips him off. It's like, fuck you. Oh, Matt, it was a paid request. Paid request by Dim Jim. He requested me to do a commentary on the Blob. He also asked me to do Out for Justice, so um, might ask you if you have the time, maybe join me on that. But of course, it's up to you. See you, Nat JPEG. Thanks for stopping by. I mean, one thing I haven't really pointed out so far is just how well paced the movie is, but I'll definitely point it out here. I mean, you're like an hour in like 10 minutes in pretty much at this point, and it's only an hour and a half. It's a pretty short film, and it's just gone by super fast. Like there really isn't a dull moment. Things aren't really slowing down. It's a pretty consistently engaging movie from start to finish. Why do I think this film bombed? 88 was a tough time for horror films in a lot of ways. Like there were some that did well, but there's a lot that didn't. I think people were starting to get burned out a little bit on slashers, but this isn't really a slasher, but it's kind of similar in some ways because it's a body count movie. Also, I think it was just advertised poorly. And it also might have been a case of it might have come out at the wrong time in terms of the release date. It sucks though that it didn't do well because I mean I saw this in a packed theater at the Hollywood Theater in 35 millimeter like a few years ago, and it was a crowd pleaser. Like people were cheering and clapping and quoting lines and just having a blast with it. And it is like it is legitimately one of the best popcorn horror films out there, despite stuff like this, with the blob eating a kid. I, I mean, this blob shows no mercy. Bob will eat anything. Makes it all the more horrifying that there's just no limits. It'll eat your kid. It'll eat your mom. It'll eat your grandma. It'll eat your cat. Like, I love that shot when Meg is hanging on and the blob's down below. Yeah, this shot right here is really good. That's an example of some really great looking blue screen because they use a lot of miniatures, for the blob. She's got to drop back down in there. Oh, knowing the blob's still there too. Like, man, I can't even imagine just the blood pressure just going through the roof. And then here's Brian. And then here's a really awesome bit right here when he's on the motorcycle and Meg's on the back and they're riding through the tunnels and the blob's behind them. Or the blob's in front of them, if I remember correctly. Yeah, because they try to get out that way, run into a dead end, and they try to get out, but the blob's there waiting for them. It's a cool stunt here. Ride the side of the tunnel and get away from the blob. Oh man, you gotta leave the bike. That sucks. I think that's probably as close as you're gonna get to the tagline, "Scream now while you can still breathe," which, by the way, is one of my favorite taglines. "Scream now while you can still breathe." I've heard of Midnight Meat Train, but I haven't seen it yet, Headshotter. This is so messed up. Can you imagine being in Brian and Meg's shoes? You go through all of that. You go through everything that you went through in that tunnel only to just get trapped. Only just to be trapped in there. Great line delivery there by Kevin. Son of a bitch. Thankfully, this guy has a bazooka. I mean, he's got a rocket launcher. To be honest, that is a pretty crazy thought, though, to use a rocket launcher in such a tight capacity. It's great, though. Really good stunt. Really good explosion there. Done practically. Pretty badass epic way to get out of there. Oh, you won't listen to me? Meadows, listen to this. But also because they busted out of there, they also have given the Blob a escape route. There's nothing particularly funny there. I'm just enjoying watching the movie. Love Kevin's delivery here. The warfare tests, they're fucked up. Blob got him. Then this moment here is great. Or the military guy gets all overzealous, thinks he could take out the Blob himself. Let's scrag that son of a bitch. Pump it full of bullets. Like that'd do anything. And a satchel charge. Stupid military guys like, yeah, we did it. Chew on that slime ball. And then coming up is honestly probably my favorite line from Brian. I think you piss it off. Love it. Classic line. Now you get ton of blob carnage here. Blob just feasted on the town and the military. Just going after everybody. I'll smack you, and then I'll eat you, and then it has. It has been. There was a piece of the Bible about a man-eating blob. I need to read that verse. Then we've got the flamethrowers here. This is so great. Like normally, oh, flamethrowers, that'll do it. But no, the blob's just like, get that shit out of here. Just blows up the guy with the flamethrower. Of course, then that sets up the Reverend because it's setting up his arc as the manic preacher that he's gonna be by the end of the movie. But now you've got the cold. Now it's settling in terms of what the weakness is for the blob. Great usage of fire extinguisher. So hey, that one extinguisher doesn't work. The flamethrower, well, not really. The one way of extinguishing the blob doesn't work with the flame, but the fire extinguisher does because it can't handle the cold. Here we go. There, yes, the snowmaker gonna make it snow. This death right here coming up for Paul McCrane. You don't see a lot, but like he just gets bent over backwards into the bookshelf. Like the sound effect, like that's a really great usage of you know some limited practical effects. You just need to show like a shot of somebody getting bent over backwards and then pulled in. but really good way to utilize the limitations in terms of what you can do. Still create a pretty memorable death scene without really any gore as well. Now it's setting up Meg for just an absolutely killer moment for her character, where Brian is in trouble. The blob looks like it's gonna eat him, but Meg is like, "Fuck that, man. I've had enough of this blob. I'm gonna show who's boss." Has her Ripley moment here. Come on, let's do better than that. Son of a bitch. The satchel charge. Oh no, she's stuck. And Brian's still in the snowmaker. Great tension here, man. Genuinely nail biting suspense. Brian got out. Come on, let's go. Boom. And hey, you wanted snow, right? It hasn't snowed in Arborville for a long time. Well, now you get the snow. Now it's snowing. And they defeated the blob. Turned it to ice. Turned it into a bunch of ice cubes. Just a really clever crowd pleasing way to stop the blob. Still utilizing the weakness of cold, but in a really unique and awesome way. What a rush indeed. It's a great way to sum up the Blob remake. It really is. What a rush. Oh, and by the way, where's my wrench set? Now it's setting up for a sequel that sadly never happened. Because now we have the Reverend, and now he's got his own flock. Now he's looking like Dan Aykroyd in Nothing But Trouble. Expect to see him talking about a banker. See you soon, banker. I'm gonna take this blob with me. Definitely was creepy, for sure, the Reverend. Soon. I wonder what they would have done in a sequel with the Reverend, like, how would they set it up where he would release the Blob? Like, what would the sign be? And now we get Aliens Brave New Love. Just a awesome song. Love it. Great metal song. Chance to play for my heart. Man who took the part. See the flame. There's a on the chain. And to time there. Innocent. With a brave new love. She gives it up like it's never been done. Brave new love. And in the dark, tough as they come. I definitely cannot, do the vocals anywhere near as good as a lead singer here. Found her way past the warning signs. Fearless in battle, defending me. But her surrender's my victory. I wanna hold her, but not too tightly. She would cry too easily. I gotta wait till the lightning strikes to set me free with a brave new love. She gives it up like it's never been done. Brave new love. And in the dark, she's as tough as they come. Yeah, it definitely remains a standalone movie for sure. Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, it's from Trick or Treat. It's from the 4K set that Red Shirt Pictures came out with fairly recently. With a brave new love. She gives it up like it's never been done. Brave new love. And in the dark, stuff as they come. Yeah, I thought it was a pretty cool set. Pretty cool for sure. I did have a Blob poster. I still have it. It got a little torn up though because I was taking it off for storage. I mean, I could still probably fix it up, but yeah, it's got a little torn up over the years, but I still have it somewhere. Shadow dance, the brave new love, and set it up like it's never been done. Brave new love. In the dark, she's as tough as they come. Gives it up like it's never been done. And in the dark, She's as tough as they come. Yeah, I mean, I could get it fixed. It probably cost me a bit because it's got a decent bit of damage on it. I do still have the Predator 2 poster. I do. It's just in storage, but I definitely do still have that. So that's the Blob from 1988. Really fun mix of horror, sci-fi, a little bit of action, even a little bit of comedy there. Just in my opinion, one of the ultimate crowd pleasers when it comes to the horror genre, and definitely one of the best remakes out there. Um, Speaking of the Blob remake, I mentioned that I had something a little special planned for the finale of this particular video on this particular stream, and here it is. So I'm gonna do something a little bit different here. So in 1988, prior to the release of the film, in a issue of Cinefex magazine, there actually was a feature in the magazine on the Blob remake, and so I'm gonna show it to you. So that's the whole plan here. So as you can see, we have got the PDF file. I have it opened up right here. The right blob for the right job. So this is from Cinefex. This is from issue 36. Cinefex is sadly no longer around. They after the pandemic, like they essentially shut down. But for years, they were a very valuable resource if you're interested in makeup effects and visual effects and stuff like that when it comes to movies and some television, but a lot of movie stuff. And here you have one on the Blob, which it still has some really rare behind the scenes photos and some really nice interviews with different members from the effects team, as well as Chuck Russell. So I'm going to show you this. I'm actually going to read it, and that's going to be the finale for this stream. So perhaps reflecting a national paranoia regarding technology and science brought on by the dawn of the nuclear age, a very particular kind of movie became popular during the 1950s. That decade produced a plethora of low budget horror films, so similar in plot and theme that only their horrific antagonists made them distinguishable from one another. Despite the fact that the Blob is now remembered primarily as the vehicle that propelled Steve McQueen into stardom, the decidedly B grade film has maintained an affectionate following throughout the years. Containing the basic element of a classic horror story, humanity's encounter with the very epitome of evil, The Blob has been deemed worthy of a 1988 remake directed by Chuck Russell. Working with producer Jack H. Harris, who also produced the original Blob, Russell and co-writer Frank Darabont strove to retain the classic elements of the original while updating the story so it would be credible to a more sophisticated audience. That's what's great about the Blob, Russell commented, is that it's archetypal. It's a primal evil. Even though the effects in the original were sometimes pretty silly, it contained the real juice of horror films, which is the catharsis that comes from facing your worst fears. The Blob is the ultimate monster, the ultimate evil. I wanted to retain that, portraying the Blob as a relentless and effective predator, something the audience could relate to with a mixture of fear and fascination. It was not our intent to stay strictly within the storyline of the original, but since the audience was bound to have certain expectations, we did try to keep its spirit. We wrote a more contemporary story and stepped up the action times 10, but we tried to remain true to the broad events of the original Blob. And they did. They absolutely did maintain the spirit of the original while putting their own spin on it. As in the original, the Blob crashes to Earth from outer space. The modern twist, however, is that rather than an extraterrestrial entity, the Blob is eventually revealed to be the result of a military experiment in biological warfare gone terribly awry. In a ball of fire, it lands on the outskirts of a small ski resort town where blood being its staple diet, it ingests one victim after another, growing ever larger as it does so. The character played by Steve McQueen in the original has been split into high school football hero Paul Taylor, Donovan Lettich, and rebel biker Brian Flagg, Kevin Dillon. With cheerleader Meg Penny, Shawnee Smith at their side, the teenagers soon discover that all traditional attempts to kill the beast fail, and even more alarming, there are government agents involved that do not want it killed. Among the key scenes from the original that have been retained, though updated, are the discovery of the blob by an old man whose hand becomes engulfed, a classic encounter in which a gelatinous mass attacks the patrons of a movie theater, and a climactic confrontation in which the blob finally succumbs to cold. With diverse credits ranging from producer on Back to School and co-writer of Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Chuck Russell clearly has strong ties to both comedy and horror and the intermingling of the two. But despite the cult film status of the original Blob, he was determined to resist the temptation to turn his remake into pure camp. I'm a thrill junkie with a sense of humor, Russell proclaimed. There's a sense of humor in the Blob, but mostly I wanted it to be thrilling. A film with some action in it. At the same time, I wanted it to embody something magical that almost goes back to our genes, to the primal universal evil. Any fantasy film requires a commitment from the filmmakers to believe in it and to give the audience enough to believe in it too. If you don't play down to the audience, if your protagonists are smart enough not to go down to the basement without a light when they hear a noise, then the audience can relate to them throughout the whole adventure. The resonance in classic monster movies is to face the beast. That means creating a beast worth facing. I tend to group horror films into two categories: films about things that can exist, and films about more fantastic things that cannot. Although the blob is in the latter category, I did not want the creature to be so fantastic that it would have no connection with reality and thus provide no genuine threat. It had to be predictable to a certain extent. If there were a blob, how would it behave? I wanted a creature that was a combination of the sensible and the fantastic. And Chuck definitely accomplished that with this film. Effects for the film were approached from three different directions. DreamQuest Images, with whom Russell had worked on A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 and Back to School, was charged with creating miniature and optical effects. Makeup designer Tony Gardner, who served with Rick Baker and Greg Kinnear on such projects as Cocoon, Harry and the Hendersons, and Gorillas in the Mist, was given the job of creating special effects for the many blob victims. Design and construction of the blob itself, however, was a task that fell to Lyle Conway, Oscar nominated mastermind behind the ingenious Audrey 2 plants in the Little Shop of Horrors. Brought in some weeks later to coordinate the activities of all three was visual effects production supervisor Michael Fink, who had helmed the effects work on War Games and the Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai. Having sought inspiration by watching footage of amoeba, paramecia, men of war, and jellyfish moving and ingesting food, Russell presented Lyle Conway and company with specific requirements for his title character. Through the very nature of the blob remained an essentially characterless creature, Russell wanted this blob to have a threatening edge not present in the original, to give it something other than a strictly amorphous quality. Conway developed an entity with tentacles, which would and by the way, this article is by Robert G. Pilk, and here's a little photo here of the meteor or the satellite, kind of getting a glimpse of what they did in order to achieve that effect. In The Blob, an updated remake of the Bargain Basement classic, director Chuck Russell orchestrated an effects extravaganza involving some of the top talent in the field. DreamQuest Images, under visual effects supervisor Hoyt Yeatman, was responsible for optical and miniature effects. Among them were scenes of the blazing meteorite that delivers the blob to Earth. For a dramatic introductory shot, a plexiglass ball covered with pyrotechnic material was suspended from a crane, then elevated and released in a giant arc that passed directly over the camera. So it was right. They actually did shoot it live. It wasn't something they did in post production with like a blue screen. A subsequent shot was similarly obtained by sliding down the fiery orb down a wire. And then the next photo after this, so they show a little bit of here with the effect being shot, which I think is pretty cool. And then this is just a shot of the can man with the blob on him, and then the aftermath. So I'm gonna check back at the chat here. Meteor. Substance beside anyone bought the substance? Nope. Just you so far, Jonathan. All right, so we're back. with the text here. So I think it goes up with the tentacles. Yeah, Conway developed an entity with tentacles, which would sorry, just would be operated by puppeteers, similar to the Vine technology used in Little Shop. Because of its ever changing size and the various actions it would be called upon to perform, compounded by the fact that it would be employed in both miniature and live action situations, numerous blob puppets had to be constructed throughout the production schedule. Essentially, each puppet was fashioned from pieces of pre dried silk that were sewn together, somewhat like a quilt, to form random sized pouches 2 to 4 inches wide. Blood veins were airbrushed on, and immediately before shooting, the quilt was injected with methyl cellulose, the effects industry standard for slime, which was originally developed as a thickening agent for such diverse products as shampoos and milkshakes. We went through hundreds of gallons of Methocel, noted visuals effects supervisor Hoyt Yeatman. The stuff is primarily water. The water weighs a lot. Also, it is very slippery and yet it dries like glue. As soon as we filled the pouches, they started to ooze. So we constantly had to keep topping them off or else get new ones. It was kind of like trying to shoot ice cream that's always melting. Once Methocel was mixed with water, added Fink, and made to kick into a gel with a small amount of ammonia, it was nearly impervious to cleanup. The gel would get stiffer with cold water, more slippery with hot water, and would pretend to go away when hit with a steam cleaner, only to come back if you got the spot wet again. It stuck when it shouldn't have, and it slid when you think it couldn't. It ate away at the asphalt parking lot, stripped paint from miniatures, gagged puppeteers, and made slipping and falling standard procedure. If anything was close to Chuck Russell's intent for the blob, it was the material from which it was made. Also conceived and executed by Conway and crew, the various blob manifestations were operated in a very direct way, primarily by puppeteers positioned underneath, manipulating the forms with hands and feet and bodies. Unfortunately, the approach which had produced such splendid results in Little Shop of Horrors proved to be awkward and impractical during principal photography of the blob. The extreme bulk of the Methocel quilts, some weighing hundreds of pounds, made it difficult for the puppeteers to manage them in any controllable sense, especially through holes concealed in the set or even on occasion underwater. In the end, time and budget constraints both worked against the technique. Although we had done some preliminary tests with different materials and techniques, explained Yeatman, the blob had not really been worked out totally by the time we started shooting. Nothing seemed just right. We had started the concept of the right blob for the right job, meaning that we could make a certain type of blob to perform a certain function, but because we were short on time, that eventually fell by the wayside. Once the live action was well underway, we began to get ready to start miniature photography. But we found that the blob just flat out would not do what it was being asked to do. So there's a little bit more of some behind the scenes shots. Here's a miniature here. I think this is yeah, I think this is Paul. This is the blob with Paul here. They did a little bit of that with miniatures. I think that's a Meg. I think they're puppets actually, miniature puppets. There would be a hole in the set and a puppeteer trying to move this big bag of goo, and it simply was not working. We would have liked to have had the time to work in front of the video, added effects producer Keith Shartle, to have the creature effects people work out what they were going to do in advance. Had they had more lead time to really research and develop a wide variety of techniques, the photography would have gone much faster. But because the schedule was so tight, we were often receiving a blob for a shot totally untried. So there we were on the set, finding out for the first time what it could and could not do. As shooting progressed, Chuck Russell and his producers became increasingly displeased with the Creature Crew output, and for reasons presumably both practical and political, decided to dismiss Lyle Conway immediately after the competition of principal photography. Brought in to replace him for the effects heavy post production phase was Stuart Ziff, the architect of the Go Motion system at ILM, the Ghost Shop supervisor on Ghostbusters. The look and basic bag of goo technique for the blob had well been established in the film and could not be changed, Fink commented. Stewart's background and knowledge of materials for effects and his willingness to exploit expeditious techniques was invaluable. Stewart also brought in some other extraordinary, strong, and talented people, such as Gary Platek and Harold Weed. There were 24 people in total on the blob crew at the time of Lyle's departure, including office people. By the time we were at our post production peak, we had 80 people, about evenly split between puppeteers and fabricators. Originally, there were not enough skilled puppeteers being used, Ziff stated. The people who were building the blob were also being used to operate it, and that simply did not work. Nothing could substitute for having genuine talented puppeteers. One of the many significant things that Mike Fink did was to hire 30 to 35 puppeteers with some film experience to operate the blob. Even so, the weight problem was never adequately resolved. We struggled with shots sometimes for days, said Fink. We were not able to get what we wanted simply because of our people. Up to their eyebrows in Mephicel, could not lift the quilts, and while hand puppeteering would predominate, mechanical devices were also employed when necessary. The blob, like all puppets, was always more alive when manipulated directly by hand, so we went to mechanical solutions only as a last resort. In some instances, we used air bladders under the blob to give it movement, mostly surface movement, where we weren't able to get a hand or where there would have been too many hands. Also, we could hook the bladders up in sequence to get a rippling effect, something that hands were unable to do because the puppeteers could not get the distance or the lift. Considerable effort was expanded in developing a means to inflate and deflate the foam latex bladders quickly and with predictable results. If something has to be inflated fast, explains Ziff, you either have to have a very large hose, and here's another shot of Paul, the death scene, some behind the scenes shots there. Um, so yeah, you either have to have a very large hose and check the chat some more here. Yeah, Cinefx is really cool. I actually have this issue, by the way. Yeah, it's the stuff that McDonald's uses for their shakes, exactly. So, going back to it here, small pressure differential or small hose at the very large pressure differential. I use the former because using high pressures with a bladder can overfill and pop it. I designed a system using 3/8 of an inch inside diameter hose and very large orifice valves. The valves would switch each bladder from vacuum to pressure and back again. The vacuum caused the bladder to deflate as quickly as it inflated. This is necessary because some of the scenes were shot at 36 or 48 frames per second, which slowed down all the action. The valves were operated electrically by a micro switch keyboard, like a piano, which enabled the puppeteer to quickly and effortlessly make the bladders go up and down. The approach so proved to be so successful that four of the keyboard devices, dubbed SIF organs by the crew, were fabricated, each capable of operating 10 bladders. Though Fink and Ziff were not able to make mechanical contributions, the actual look of the blob had already been locked in, leaving little room for aesthetic alterations. Fink had particular problems resolving the design from a psychological perspective. The first week I was on the show, I met with Chuck and I said, "You have one major problem, the blob. Your central character has no face, no arms, no eyes. How do we make it have intent?" That had never really been addressed. All the puppeteers were saying, "Give me a face." Instead, all they had were tentacles, which were an attempt to give the blob intent, but which I would have fought against if they had not already been established. Let the blob extend itself, but no tentacles. The problem with the tentacles is integrating these mechanically articulated objects with the blob itself. The two looks rarely, if ever, work together. Also, they were difficult to manipulate in a believable way. We could put short tentacles over hands and puppeteer them, but we did that in only a few instances and only when scale and desired movement allowed us to do so. For majority of the shots, tentacles had to be mechanized so that they could produce very fluid motion. With no alternative but to work within the limitations of the already established design, the post production effects team devised methods that would make the ungainly blob perform as needed. We shot in reverse whenever possible, Fink stated. We would put the particular tentacle in its ending position, then pull it away as fast as we could. When it was reversed on film, it looked like it was going right for the spot we wanted. It would have been very tough for the tentacle to hit its mark any other way. The only problem with shooting in reverse was that the acceleration and deceleration curves were exactly reversed. So when you see the film run in reverse, the tentacle slows out to its stopping point because we're actually pulling it away. In reality, the slowest part of an accelerated movement is at the beginning. So when shooting in reverse, you have to make things move really fast so the deceleration won't be noticeable. Otherwise, whatever you're filming looks like it's gliding to a stop.
In addition to reverse photography, miniatures were employed when the weight of the various blob manifestations rendered them unmanageable in full scale. The live action blob could not get much beyond a 2 by 3, 3 by 5 foot slab, Yeatman explained. Anytime it had to move or writhe around or hit a specific mark, miniatures were used. Sometimes we had 18 to 20 blobateers working at one time, running one little 2 foot blob. We had to use video assist so that everyone could see what was happening. Unlike most miniature work, where the increased scale equates to increased credibility, the effects crew found that the smaller the blob, the better it looked. Though a number of half scale settings had already been constructed, subsequent ones were found to work better in eighth scale. While miniatures provided the only solution to handling the blob's action for many of the scenes, the physical composition of the blob itself presented a new set of difficulties in terms of generating opticals. The blob was very slick and very shiny, explained Yeatman, which meant that we could not use traditional blue screen and matte techniques. Oh, so they didn't actually use blue screen, which makes what they did even more impressive if you think about it. Those slimy, gooey sacks reflected light like a chrome ball, which made them terrible for matting. Yet they still had to be matted into the background somewhere, somehow. Any kind of backlit screen, sodium vapor, front or backlight, or blue screen was deemed unsuitable because the blob was so reflective. If we had tried to use time process photography, either Harryhausen style stop motion or what ILM calls go motion, combined with normal front or rear projection, we would have run into a different problem. We were usually mixing film speeds and process projectors that have difficulties projecting back at high frame rates. Normally, they cannot handle anything above 24 to 36 frames per second. Also, the blob was notorious for never hitting its mark. Often, we did 40 or more takes before we got a piece of something that worked. So, it would have been nearly impossible to try to synchronize blob action with a background plate using normal front or rear projection. Any technique requiring motion control, such as reverse blue screen or ultraviolet matting approach, was also out of the question, since the blob action was virtually unrepeatable. The only solution was to use a front projected blue screen. Since front projection employs a retroreflective screen, where the background image is projected very faintly at the object and focused intensely by the screen, the blob could be photographed in front of such a screen without the kinds of spill problems that would have resulted from a traditionally backlit or front lit material. So they did use blue screen, but it was just a front projected. So for the whole thing with Tony Gardner, because that's Tony Gardner there, I think, and I think that might be Chuck Russell there right next to him. With that particular effect here, and also with this one right here, they did a lot of miniature stuff. So they it was a multi-stage effect, so it required a variety of live and puppet elements in full-size and miniature configurations. Among the miniature shot was a shot in which Taylor's girlfriend attempts to pull him from the blob. Convincing the representations of the characters were achieved via computer scanning of the actors, subsequent outputting of the data to a lathe device, which manufactured wax replicas in third scale. From these carvings, it was possible for the makeup team to mold and cast a pair of articulated puppets. A full scale mechanical figure actuated with cables and radio control was employed for a final close up of Taylor dissolving into the mass. Tony Gardner explains the detail of its operation to Chuck Russell, as developed by Lyle Conway. And so, yeah, that's Tony Gardner and that's Chuck Russell right there. And they're talking about the effect. Since the freeform puppets seem to work best in small sizes, miniature settings had to be constructed for scenes in which the blob had to appear large. Most significant was the eighth scale reproduction of the entire town center of Aberville, uh, Louisiana, which doubled as the fictionalized ski resort town of Arborville. Created by master model maker Greg Jean and his crew, constructed at DreamQuest, where it would eventually be photographed. The model town measured 38 feet by 88 by 80 feet. So, checking out the stream again here. The chat. Fantastique. Still on archive. Deal with the tourist as lost and will leave my state ground. Sorry about that. Wow. Dang. That sounds like a major inconvenience. Meticulous preparation ensured that it would be an exact replication of the location site. A tremendous number of photographs were taken, noted Yeatman documenting all the street signs and everything. Paint chips were taken off the buildings so the colors in the model would match the live action. Because of the tight schedule, the miniatures had to be ready to shoot immediately after the location shooting wrapped. If we had shot the location part of the picture first, then had time to build the miniatures, we would have known that we were not going to need. We would have known what we were and were not going to need. Unfortunately, since we were there to start shooting uh, the miniatures immediately, we had to build everything, an entire city block. And even though some of the miniature buildings and such would never wind up being on the screen, and shooting the miniatures, which would eventually have to cut in seamlessly with the live action photography, Chuck Russell strove for lifelike realism. One of the dangers of miniature sets is that you can put the camera anywhere. I think it's wiser, however, to shoot at ground level and give yourself the same kind of limitations you would have on a live action set. If you do an impossible crane shot and an aerial point of view with a locked off camera, chances are your miniature will look fake. Maintaining skill was equally critical, since fire was a predominant feature in the climactic battle sequence, and since actual flames in a miniature setting invariably look unrealistic, the decision was made to shoot full size flame elements and composite them into the shots. We did a large number of open burns, said Yeatman. After shooting the miniature, we would go out in the parking lot at night and produce 8 to 10 fires, which would then be combined with the miniature to help give the justification for the lighting and make it look full scale. While miniatures were used extensively, little was required in the way of matte paintings. An exception was the opening shot. From the titles, the camera tilts down from the stars through a cloud layer and finally to the Earth, suggesting that the blob is a visitor from another planet. Both the star background and the subsequent aerial shot of the town were paintings executed by matte supervisor Robert Schiffo. As the camera breaks out of the clouds, Schiffo explained, there's an overview of the town, apparently from the point of view of the helicopter. This aerial matte painting matches both the real town and the miniature, at least the main street area with the church and the theater and the park. The rest of the town was never really established, so it was invented based upon input from Chuck Russell as to what he thought Arborville should look like. Determined to add life into the painting, Schiffo produced a number of moving elements. We put in moving clouds and sparkling water. And since we were trying to make it look as if we were flying toward the town, we decided to add split screens to suggest a perspective shift. In the past, we had done maybe 3 splits at most on a painting for a sky shot, one at the bottom, one halfway up, and one at the top. We do that by masking off everything but one split, one section at a time. Normally, the bottom section will remain static. Then we mask off the bottom and the top in order to reveal the middle section. We drift that section usually to the left or the right at a slow rate. Then we repeat the procedure at an increased rate for the top section. When all three are composited together for a soft edge split, the sky appears to be moving faster at the top and slower at the bottom. With the blob shot, however, we were moving towards a landscape, which tends to be less forgiving than clouds. So we had to have a lot more splits. We wound up using 11 splits on a painting that was only 4 by 5 feet. So every little section had to match exactly in density. Each one had to overlap the right extent to the right extent to keep it from getting to either a double exposure or a dark area. We did that by placing a simple mechanical device on the mat, a stand in front of the lens. The device had an opening, a single window, which revealed one split at a time. When we took the camera, which was a motion control rig, we moved it toward the painting at a fast rate for the bottom splits and lower for the top ones that were closer to the horizon. The overall effect was that the foreground was rushing towards the camera and the background was standing still. To make it come alive even more, we added a roll axis to the camera to create simulated helicopter movement. Foreground clouds were matted in separately, using one of the cavernous bays in the new facility in Semi Valley. DreamQuest technicians generated clouds on a very large scale and shot them in a darkened environment. We heated the air in the room and then opened the shipping doors at night to get cold air on the bottom and warm air at the top. This created an inversion layer. Then we used type AB smoke, which is somewhat caustic and nasty to work with, that generated cloud instantly that just sat there while the camera traveled through it for about 50 feet. Obviously, that was something we could not have done in a cloud tank. As in the original film, the object rushing towards Earth is soon revealed to be a meteorite. Joe Viscosil, who did our pyrotechnics, made a plexiglass ball, which is 1 foot in diameter, covered it in magnesium type powdered material. We suspended it with a piano wire like a pendulum from a giant construction crane. A second crane carried the ball about 100 feet up and out of frame. At nighttime, the ball was ignited with a propane torch and released. Just beneath the lowest part of the arc, we set up the camera and turned it on at high speed. The result was a glowing orb with a 10-foot tail of fire whizzing over the camera. The follow-on shot, in which the meteor actually plummets to Earth, was executed in a similar way. The camera was stationed looking down a 200-foot cliff and operated at high speed as the flaming ball slid past it on a single strand of wire. The resulting explosion was shot full scale by Terry Frazee on a background plate that was later composited into the shot. So now it's showing a little bit more footage here. I mean, not footage, a little more photos here behind the scenes. One of the makeup effects guys, I think that's Erica Leniak's crushed in head. And then you're seeing more of the shot there. Um, Tony Gardner, another guy working on it. Here's a shot of the blob. I think it's one of the miniature shots there. I think this is a part of the effect with the guy at the drain. You got the shoe here. It's popping open there. This is another shot of the blob. I think this might be one of the shots in the sewer. So you have the can collector who comes up upon the still smoldering crash site using a fallen tree branch to probe the crater. The man discovers the blob. Suddenly, the mass shoots up and engulfs his hand. They achieve that shot by shooting it in reverse. The blob was placed on the end of the branch, and then someone reached his hand up from inside the crater. When the stick was withdrawn, the person in the crater pulled the mass off. Played back, it looks as if the blob jumped up onto the stick. The blob was made of aquapol, a polyurethane material that mixed with water forms a very bizarre jello-like material that can be cast into any shape. A lot of care is to be taken when working with the stuff, though, because the unreacted components are quite toxic. Uh, they then did the gag when the can man's trying to cut his hand off. The gag involved fake blood rigged to spurt out from concealed hoses. We had gallons of fake blood on the set, but Chuck decided he still wanted more. So we rigged more blood. Unfortunately, when we first tried it, there was air in the line and the stuff just splattered all over everyone and everything. Then the blob gets discovered by Paul and Meg, and then the first victim is taken to a local hospital. And then they talk about Tony Gardner's effects. This is Tony Gardner quoted here. My idea was that the blob was after flesh and blood. Bones, fingernails, and hair were really just waste material. So the victims would actually dissolve kind of bloodlessly. They would become smoother and more translucent until they were almost pearlescent. Chuck wanted the deaths to be bloodier, though, at least at first. For the ingested can man, Gardner attached a giant appliance to actor Billy Beck, who was positioned on a platform beneath the surface of the examining table. It was a foam piece that blended onto his neck below the jawline. His own head came up through the bottom of the table, but the rest of his body was artificial, with a lace beard added to the appliance neck to help blend it to the actor. The majority of his bubbling guts were sculpted into the foam and fiberglass appliance. We painted a layer of stain onto the material and dressed a layer of slime on top of that. Inside crevices sculpted into the appliance, we layered some calcium turnings and small calcium pellets that we took that look like gravel, except they are silver colored. When water is added, the turnings generate intense heat and a lot of steam, so a factor we took into consideration by sealing the false torso to the table so that we would not risk burning Billy if water leaked under the appliance. The blob, now about 5 feet across, is loose in the hospital. Then they're talking about the scene of the blob slithering behind Paul. We shot Paul blue screen. Then we built a half scale miniature of the doctor's office interior on a cant, about a 25-degree tilt. The camera was positioned to look down on it. Then one of the quilt type blobs was rolled down the wall and shot in reverse. So then when it was run forward, it appeared to be slithering up. Then you have the Paul Taylor ingestion. That one proved difficult because apparently it was a lot gorier than it ended up being in the movie because it would have given the film an X rating. Gardner's talking about it. It was very graphic. There were close-ups of his face decomposing and close-ups of his arm being ripped off in slow motion and in great detail. Um, Knowing how great that effect is, I honestly would like to have seen the full effect sequence. So the sequence begins with a view of Paul trapped inside the blob, accomplished during post production with Lettich sitting on a rolling platform encased in a translucent pink fiberglass shell, over which went layers of fabric in various colors and patterns. On top of all of this went several blob quilts, each with a specific design and function. Though the actor had his own air supply, he had to hold his breath during each take, and in the process, getting generous doses of Mephisto up his nose, in his mouth, and even in his ears. Sounds really uncomfortable. The next shot in the sequence, Meg running forward and grabbing Paul's hand. Uh, I was essentially drafted into doing the shot, which is Tony Gardner. I was told on the Wednesday after Lyle left the picture that this particular creature shot needed to work the following Tuesday morning. And since I had shared a shop with Lyle and was aware of what was being used, I would be the best one to handle it. The rig we built was a rolling cart with a heat formed back shell supported by a post on one end and the actor's back on the other. That way, Donovan could puppeteer it and the back would not appear so rigid. Over that went two layers of clear vinyl bladders, an aquapol shroud to keep the puppeteer fairly dry, and then layers of spandex and nylon tricot fabric cut into vein patterns. On top of all of this went a tailored blob quilt jacket with blue streaks painted onto it, and some underlying layers of fabric in various shades of red. When we pulled the layers back off his body at different speeds and from different directions, we would get flashes of purple as well as various shades of red and blue. It really created a sense of activity within the blob as it digested Paul. Next came a shot of Meg attempting to pull Paul out of the gooey mass. That we accomplished with a third scale mechanical puppets of the two characters, although we only had to concentrate on Donovan from the waist up. For accuracy, we had a company called Image Masters do a computer scan of Donovan's head and shoulders to reduce the image to the scale we needed. Then their computer data was fed into a lathe, which duplicated his form three dimensionally into the carving wax. From the wax copy, we were able to resculpt and mold and cast what was needed. Next, we used another third scale mechanical puppet. And then they talk about the drain effect here. Because, yeah, apparently the feet, they were made from hot melt vinyl. And though most of the blob forms are puppeteer manually, fewer particularly troublesome ones were created mechanical devices. And so, yeah, they used another third scale mechanical puppet to sculpt it in a more advanced stage of liquefaction. This point, the scene begins cutting to inserts of Paul's arm being pulled off. Chuck had been very specific about this. He wanted the arm to look like bubblegum stretching until it snapped. So we made tendons and veins out of latex, spandex, and nylon and put them inside a mechanism in the arm stump that would release each strand at a different time. When we cut back the last close up of Paul as he dissolves, we are actually looking at a head that was sculpted by Brian Wade from a mold of the actor's head and shoulders. The jaw stretched down to mid chest level and continues out of frame. His eye bags sag, his face thins out, and blood starts pouring from his eyes and mouth. All of the larger movements are operated by cables, while the eyes were radio controlled. So they talk about a different death scene was devised for a girl who essentially implodes as a blob rises through her body and dissolves her from the inside out. So this is the Scott Jeske one. The effect starts with the actress turning her head once the turn was underway. Her real head was replaced by a puppet, Erica Liniak, essentially a foam latex skin glued over a collapsing understructure of fiberglass and butyrate. Separate pieces of the skull were connected to different cables so that they could be pulled in at different times. The eyes were rigged to roll up together as her face was pulled in and blood was pumped out. The camera cut to another angle to a head that was sculpted by Lauren Githens in the final collapsed state, with some very simple mechanics under the skin to make the surface bubble undulate. Track tubing was used to actuate the tentacles coming out of her chest. The creature then continues its rampage into the diner, and they talk about the blob that bursted out of the drain. The blob that burst out of the drain was a sculpted piece about 2.5 feet in diameter that consisted of a clear body and a heavily veined foreskin piece that traveled up over the main body surface as it attached itself to the cook's face. The initial shot was done in reverse, with the blob tendril being pulled off actor Clayton Landy and into the sink. From there, the sink was continued with a stuntman being yanked into the sink by a firmly attached tendril. A high angle shot next affords a view of the cook's blob engulfed head dissolving into the drain, accomplished with a false head that deflated like a balloon while the stuntman thrashed around. his real head concealed beneath the counterfeit in a cutaway a section of the sink. Within seconds, all that is left is the cook as several stray limbs spinning and thrashing their way down the drain. The 2 feet sticking out were cast from hot melt vinyl, and they used that instead of foam rubber because of its ability to compress. Christian Wabscall was placed on a giant Lazy Susan, affectionately dubbed the Spin and Barf, to affect the twisting hand movements in the air. There were also two puppeteers were also in attendance to operate the legs and control the flow of steam and blood. In a tight close-up, the last body part to be sucked down the drain was foam latex deflatable foot manufactured by Andrew Kenworthy. The drain then explodes. Then the blob pops out of it. Apparently, some of the effects that they utilized were worked on by the All Effects group who created Johnny Five. So there's a short circuit connection with the blob. And the blob then reaches the freezer. Then they're talking about what they did for that effect. They used some crazy glue and some other things to create that effect. And then they also, did some stuff with the crystals and everything. Then you have Fran. She runs outside, winds up in the phone booth. All Effects made a half-scale phone booth about 4 feet tall. We set up 6 air mortars packed with blob material, and all of them were pointed at the miniature for the big attack. When they fired, though, it was just too much. We couldn't see anything clearly, so we eventually wound up using only 2. Then here's a shot of Fran seeing the sheriff. There's the melted uh, theater goer. Here's another shot of the poor projectionist and his yo-yo. Here's a shot of what probably was a pretty miserable shoot inside of the sewer. The sheriff already inside the creature. For the sequence, a large aquarium was built around a full-size phone booth. A puppet representing the half-consumed sheriff was then submerged inside as it was to be continued disintegrating. We experimented with a lot of things like gelatins and bromo seltzer to get the dissolving action, Gardner commented. We found out the action itself tended to obscure the very things we wanted to see. Realized that we had to come up with something that was controllable and repeatable, yet clear enough to see through. We experimented in a big industrial sink first. Next, we went to a fish tank with a small version of our sheriff puppet, then a bigger fish tank, and finally to the actual tank built for the scene. Though Gardner's crew had built several bodies for the scene, only the sheriff's face actually made it into the film. As the body first appears, it hits the glass of the phone booth straight on, and then his half-eaten face angles into view, mouth stretching out, face caving in, the eyes moving all the while, to create the impression of skin steaming off his face. We dressed the foam latex skin with elements that would appear translucent in water. A flexible resin, nylon, some hairnet material, and some other lightweight and sheer fabrics. We painted veins in with very light patterns with an airbrush. I wanted the effect to have the look of milk or colored liquid being poured into water, not chunks of hamburger breaking away. The puppet was articulated by cables attached to levers and radio-controlled servo motors placed outside the tank. We also had puppeteers in scuba gear actually in the tank with the puppet for a minimal amount of hand puppeteering. Bill Sturgeon had made an understructure for the puppet in such a way we could easily submerge it in water without damaging the mechanics. The scuba divers were directly behind the puppet. Chris Goad operated the mouth and body position, while other puppeteers operated the blob quilt submerged in the water, parting it so the sheriff could make his entrance. Then they're talking about Bill Briggs's death. Todd Chaney took the actual bookcase that was going to be used in set, said Tony Gardner, created a new base for it that would tip it back at an angle but still support it enough so we could add on to it. The next step was the addition of a long table off the backside of the bookcase. On that table was a small sliding board like a sled in which actor Paul McCrane would sit in, so his legs extended through the opening of the shelf. Working from a fiberglass body cast of Paul, we manufactured a pair of mechanical legs. Meanwhile, Teresa Burkett fabricated a harness which would attach the fake legs to Paul's waist while he was sitting on the sliding board. And here's a look at the effects of the. I think that's a different shot. I don't know if they used that particular one in the movie. So give the impression that the legs he was standing on were his own. 2 technicians pulled the sled across the platform while a puppeteer operated the knees and ankles of the false legs. With a breakaway shelf and a black wall, plus some lightweight prop books or dressing, all Paul had to do was pull his arms in and lay down. The rest was up to us. Then they talk about the projectionist booth thing. They did a sculpture that was molded and cast in urethane foam. Fiberglass was cut into sections and mechanized. Then they did a whole thing with the yo-yo, and they had puppets, work with that movement and make the yo-yo fall down. Then they talk about the way that they did the blob attacking in the theater. Talk about the lighting sequence and how difficult that was, with the strobe lights and the plates and everything, the blue screen plates. And then they talk about the person with the melted cheerleader. It was actually a mechanically assisted dummy constructed by the effects crew. It had basically a loose jointed body with a cable operated head and neck. They tried to cast the head up in aquapol, but the stuff did not want to stay in the same configuration that it was cast in. So they wound up casting it out of standard latex and polyfoam. The tendons were, latex, spandex, and nylon glued to her head and carpeting. Calcium turnings were used once again for bubbling and a steaming effect. Then you have the whole thing where the blob crawls into the sewer. They wind up, the blob gets Eddie. Tony's talking about that particular effect. He mentions that, it was a shock cut, so they didn't have to worry about the character melting before their eyes. So they just designed and built a foam rubber suit the stuntman Bobby Porter would get in and out of fairly rapidly, except for the head, which is glued down around his eyes and mouth. The suit included remnants of melted clothing as well as a blob cape, which attached to his shoulders, and blob tendons, which ran from his arms down to a submerged platform, where a technician kept tension on the other end. The idea was to create illusion that Eddie was trading against a large mass that was trying to pull him under. The actor had an air supply and was able to stay underwater comfortably until some air mortars behind him blew his signal to explode off the platform. And they talk about the blob bursting out of the sewers into the center of town, discussing how they did that particular effect with, miniatures and blue screen plates. Um, then they're talking about the battle zone and everything. They didn't really. So the blob itself never actually made an appearance during some of the shooting here. The street scenes involving it, they were done in miniature. They weren't done, on the set. So Stuart Ziff and his crew devised a means for the blob to be struck by miniature gunfire. We created this wonderful device whereby we pulled the little plugs out from the bottom of a table to make it look like the blob was being hit by bullets. They also, utilized smoke and debris. They did the belly flop on the pavement, with the miniature and used optical effects. And filming the battle sequence, Russell wanted the freedom to shoot the blob at whatever film speed he felt was appropriate. So to do that, they had to make a fair amount of adjustments with shutter speed and so on and so forth. Here's a shot of the miniature blob rising up. See some of the cars there and everything. Yeah, here's some more miniature effects here. Here's a shot of the miniature snowmaker and the miniature blob. Here's some more shots of the miniature and everything. Here's a poor guy who is under the blob quilt. He definitely does not look like he's having a good time. There is the photo evidence of the sliding sort of mechanism that Paul McCrane was on when he got bent over backwards and slid into the bookcase. Here's a look of the effect in action. And then they're talking about the flamethrower burst and how they did that, how they did the burns and everything. Um, Burdened with budget limitations, a tight schedule, personal changes, and a leading character that was in essence an uncooperative bag of goo, Chuck Russell nonetheless found the experience of remaking the Blob a joyful one. It was very hectic. There was not the usual feeling of satisfaction that you get on a normal film once principal photography wraps, because the special effects film, we were just getting started at that point. All the opticals and composites were coming together at the very last possible moment. It was crazy. In spite of that, though, I never had more fun doing a film. And yeah, that is the Cinefex article on the making of the Blob. So hope you enjoyed that. I know it's a very dense. That's Cinefex for you. Cinefex has a lot of dense writing in it, but it's interesting and very detailed and very in depth. So thank you, thank you, Acres of Movies. Sorry for the nice words there. Um, who would win between the Thing and the Blob? Uh that's difficult. The Thing can replicate. The Thing can clone itself, but the Blob just dissolves material. So how would the Thing copy the Blob if it gets dissolved by the Blob? Something to think about. But yeah, I think I'll end the stream there with that little question. Leave the chat or leave the comments with that one to ponder. You know, who would win between the Thing and the Blob? Um, if we're talking about the two movies, just to be real quick, um, I prefer John Carpenter's The Thing of the Blob, but it's a very close race because I like a lot of the films very much equally for the most part. But if I would had to choose, if I had to choose between those two, I would probably pick The Thing, but I still love the Blob remake. And yeah, hope you enjoyed the stream. And I got some more planned. I actually have a fair amount of audio commentaries, live commentaries I still got to get to. You know, I got to get to, I got to do one for Out for Justice, Steven Seagal movie, and the first two Beverly Hills Cop movies. So I'll give everybody a heads up when I'm doing those as usual, and maybe I'll just show up one night just doing a random stream, not even really doing a commentary. But anyway, thank you for joining in. Thanks for watching, and see you later. See ya.